In the 1980s, the war on drugs caused prison populations to rise significantly, which meant the government needed more space to keep their prisoners. This presented an opportunity for private businesses. They came to the government and claimed that they could help alleviate the overcrowding of prisons in the USA. They even claimed that they would be able to operate the facilities cheaper and more efficiently. If we put aside morality for a bit and focus solely on the money, then private prisons do have some advantages over public prisons. They can construct prisons faster than the government, and they hire their staff locally, which reduces operating costs and increases economic development in areas where they are built. However, they treat their prisoners worse than how they would be treated in federally owned prisons. According to Judith Green, prisoners placed in private correctional facilities voiced complaints that private management did not provide improved services, educational and vocational training programs were skimpy, and that the guards were inexperienced and unprepared to handle violent situations. But their voices went completely unheard, and private prisons continued to make money. The fact that their focus is on money and not the well-being of prisoners is a significant problem, and is very open to corruption. An example of this corruption would be in the Kids for Cash scandal, when it was discovered that two judges in Pennsylvania made millions of dollars by wrongfully sending thousands of children to private prisons and getting money from the prisons for doing so. But why would the prisons pay judges to send children to them? Well, that's because private prisons make money by having prisoners in them, since the government pays them to house people. Therefore, in order to maximize profits, they want to keep as many people in prison for as long as possible, while spending the least amount of money on taking care of them. In addition to the corruption this can lead to, as mentioned previously, it's also the reason why prisoners complain about the quality of the services. For example, with staff members, private prisons hire staff that are too inexperienced or just don't hire enough staff members so they pay less to run the prison. In one example, two prisoners escaped from a private prison in Texas. The staff were alerted when the prisoners cut a hole through a fence, but instead of doing something about it, they just silenced the alarm and completely ignored it. Hopefully by now you understand what the problem with private prisons are. Luckily, there is a solution to this, which is to just get rid of private prisons. But getting rid of private prisons can't just happen instantly, they have to be phased out slowly. Private prisons hold about 8% of the US prison population, so there has to be more space made for them. A good way to make this space would be to repeal certain laws made during the war on drugs, like the Anti-Drug Abuse Act of 1986. This made it so that people who committed drug-related offenses had to be sent to prison for a certain amount of time, which caused prison populations to rise because people were staying in them for longer. If that law were to be removed, then private prisons wouldn't be as needed. And once we phase private prisons out, we will see some benefits for prisoners. One of these benefits would be that prisoners would stay in prisons for shorter amounts of time. This is because the guards in private prisons are inexperienced and not paid well, so they are more likely to hand out infractions because it makes it easier to maintain authority, and these infractions can cause prisoners to be unable to get released early for good behavior. Another benefit would be that prisoners would experience less violence. According to criminal justice programs, 49% more violent incidents and guard assaults are reported in private prisons than public prisons, and inmate-on-inmate assaults are said to occur 65% more in a private facility. You don't have to wait for private prisons to be ended by someone else. You can help end them yourself by supporting the Sentencing Project. They are currently working on trying to make prisons more humane for prisoners by ending extreme sentencing, which causes prisoners to stay in prison for much longer than needed, expanding voting rights so prisoners can vote, and promoting youth justice. They also offer ways that you can help by showing some issues that need fixing and how you can fix them. Alternatively, if you can't do any of that, you can always just donate to them. In conclusion, while it is true that private prisons are faster to build, cheaper to maintain, and more convenient to governments, they are terrible to actually housing their prisoners. In their desire to make as much money as possible while reducing costs, they hire inexperienced staff members, construct prisons poorly, and do everything possible to keep prisoners inside of them for as long as possible. This is why we have to get rid of private prisons.